Stevie Young here at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts with, well, Darth Vader's muscle car. Back in the 1980s, there was nothing really hotter than the Buick Grand National, especially in 1986 and 87 when the hood got that special 3.8 SFI turbo logo. SFI means sequential fuel injected, and of course below the license plate is a gap in the air dam which shows where the intercooler goes. So again, 86 and 87, the final 2 years for turbo Buick V6 cars, intercooled, fuel injected, sequential, 235 or 245 horsepower depending on 86 or 87. But this one takes things even further. Let's pop the hood and have a look. And yeah, and you know, a lot of these cars, when they sold, were sold to engineers and people who like to tinker, but not backyard hot rodders. These were some of the earliest computer tech people, and this one here has had some high quality upgrades made. There's a Turbonetics cold side turbocharger turbine upgrade, which boosts the amount of boost, literally. And also there's items from Kenny Bell. Of course, Kennedy Bell, Pops Kennedy, was a Buick dealer in the 1960s, 70s, and of course into the 80s, Kenny Bell became the go-to company for Buick turbo hop-up goodies. And this one has a fair number of things added. We'll see more of that inside of the car. And of course, like all Grand Nationals, this one does have air conditioning with a very specific suitcase, as they say. The word turbo is next to that Harrison gold bar, which is unique to these turbocharged Regals, different box than you'd find on a carbureted car. Also, this one, of course, is cruise control. Right here, we see the diaphragm and the equipment right here for the cruise control for easy highway cruising. And speaking of highways, back in the 80s, I remember driving around in Connecticut. The Connecticut State Police used Buick T-types as police interceptors, usually brown with the aluminum wheels blacked out, but they were absolute killers on the road, and whether you're behind the badge or running from the badge, these cars were pretty hard to beat in the 1980s. Now this one, of course, is a Grand National. These were always black, and we have the chrome wheels, which are also standard equipment on Grand Nationals. These are 15 by 7, I believe, inches wide. Correct tires and lug nuts and everything about them is just as they were back in the day. The only thing is the front tires on this are big, the rear tires are bigger. These are Cooper Cobra tires, and the builder of this car chose to go with a little bit of a raked look, so big and bigger works for me. Again, these are Cooper Cobra Radial GTs, good name brand tires. Now inside, we notice before we do that, this one is not a T-top car, which is a good or a bad thing. To me, it's good because a lot of the T-top cars, two things. They leaked, which sometimes caused B-pillar rust, and they also tended to grow cracks in the bodywork because of the flexing of the roofless roof. So this one is a slick top, which in my book is a better thing to have. It accentuates the sinister look of the Grand National, all black like that. Now inside, we mentioned some day 2 add-ons, and we see some things between the seats up on the dashboard. Amongst them is a Scan Master. That is a playback device, an early one, and that allows you to, after a race, determine your fuel-air ratio, how much knock there was, if any, all kinds of different things, boost, etc., was all recorded on that, and it did a playback, and that's all still functional with instructions, and again, more on those instructions in a moment. Of course, we also have the knock light there. If that goes into the red, you want to back off a bit. Not that you'd see that often, but it's good to see it. And of course, the boost gauge next to it, those are add-ons from Kenny Bell. And one kind of funny thing is, of course, you know, the federal mandate for 85-mile-an-hour speedometers was done by 89, but the Buick turbo cars fell under its spell, and there's that silly 85-mile-an-hour speedometer. But it speaks to the originality of this car. And this one shows under 40,000 miles on the odometer. Of course, it has the Lear Sigler seats with the Buick turbo logo in the headrest and a very, very stock original interior. So just a nice example of Darth Vader's muscle car, courtesy of Buick in the mid-1980s. And of course, like all turbo Grand Nationals, 86, 87, dual exhaust, one on each side. And unadorned tips, very businesslike, but look out. And of course, above those tips is the 8.5-inch ring gear of the 10-bolt rear end, used only in turbo Grand Nationals and T-types. In fact, Monte Carlo SS had a smaller axle. The Hurst Olds had a smaller axle. Only the 330 foot-pound of the Grand National warranted GM's use of that big 10-bolt, 8.5-inch ring gear, present and accounted for. Of course, like all Grand Nationals, the trunk spoiler is here, adding some sinister vibes to the car, and of course the Grand National logo on the deck lid. All of that correct and original. And this is a real Grand National, of course. Nobody's cloning these cars. They're a little bit too complex to clone. Not like an SS Impala or Chevelle or something like that. These things have a lot of very specific stuff. And to prove it's really a Grand National, not that we're really that concerned, here is the original warranty sticker with all of the data. The LC2, that's the turbocharged V6, G80 positive traction. And of course, all these things right here are the DNA of this car and the goodies that are still in place and accounted for. Now, we mentioned earlier the gauges and things. This car, again, was owned by an enthusiast, and here is a lot of information from the T-Type Club, etc. And you know, just basically, this guy was definitely an enthusiast, and here is his book talking about you know, coil pack procedure, checkouts, tires, etc., etc. And the scan, here's the Scan Master scan tool, the device we saw on the dashboard. Here's the instructions and the backstory of how that works, the coding, and just a lot of receipts from Kenny Bell for the spoiler kit. What do we have here? Just neat stuff. Kenny Bell installed the Kenny Bell valve cover breather, and all of this stuff was not inexpensive. This fellow spent a lot of money on the car. He loved it. And again, most of these Grand Nationals were owned by mature owners, whereas the 5 liters tend to be owned by younger people out ripping gears. But these were more banker hot rods. And it's a great example of the breed. Something like 20,000 of these were made in the final year of 1987. This is the end of the line for the mighty Buick Grand National. These things are red hot. At Barrett-Jackson recently in Las Vegas, the last built Grand National sold for big bucks, like 3 miles on the odometer. So these things are all getting to be pretty hot. Better to buy one now than later. Now, this car can be purchased with as little as 10% down, and High-Octane Classics will deliver this car. Fear not, High-Octane and this car right now are located in Auburn, Massachusetts, but you don't have to be near us to purchase the car. We'll happily deliver it to you no matter where you might be. And keep in mind, too, that High-Octane Classics does consider trades, late models, other Buicks, motorcycles, you name it, they'll certainly consider it as a possible trade-in. And keep in mind, too, that High-Octane Classics has been in business for about 15 years, and they're always looking for qualified sales and service professionals. Even newcomers with a solid work ethic are invited to apply for a potential job. You can call them at 508-859-4515. And if you have 1 or 20 cars to sell, High-Octane Classics is always looking for quality vehicles to purchase and add to their inventory. So again, you can call them at 508-859-4515 and learn more about this 1987 end-of-the-line Darth Vader muscle car, the Grand National. You can check it out on the High-Octane Classics website.